In today's modern world, where consumers are increasingly leveraging digital channels to facilitate financial transactions, it's imperative that banks prioritize digital-first experiences. Hi, my name is Andy Cease, Director of Product Marketing at Entrust, here on the show floor of Singapore FinTech Festival, joined by Benjamin Dessy from Mastercard to talk about how banks are pivoting to a digital-first approach and staying top of mind by doing so. Welcome, Benjamin, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so my name is Benjamin Dessy. I work for Mastercard for about 20 years now. I'm what they call a veteran, right? I've been having different function in the company in product implementation, business development, and for the last years, I've been managing a fintech program called Mastercard Engage that actually manages the relationship with our fintech enablers like Entrust, right? And the idea is to make sure that we create a network of reliable players and partners that can help us scale our respective business.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thanks again for joining us for this conversation today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So for the first question, how does MasterCard ensure that its digital-first strategy aligns with the diverse needs and preferences of consumers across different regions and demographics?
We need to make sure as we build our new innovative solution that we stay ahead of the curve and listen to the new trends that are basically appearing everywhere in the planet. And it's very clear that our strategy has always been to partner with institutions, with customers, with fintech, to actually build a digital world that's gonna please everyone and everywhere. So that's really about it. And digital first is certainly the materialization of this, right? So if you look at what the customer needs and the consumer needs now, it's having kind of a direct, easy, and fast access to payment methods that will be accessible everywhere through any channel. And digital first is really about that, right? It's making sure that when you want to get your card, you have access to a digital experience. You don't want to fill in PDFs anymore and all of that. It has to be online from your application. You want to have also a quick response. So you don't want to wait anymore 3-4 weeks for your plastic card to be delivered. You want actually the card to be directly activated in your Google or Apple device or banking device. I think it's gonna be important that through that digital experience that we provide enhanced value proposition, right? It's all about adding loyalty programs. If you want to keep your digital receipt, you have that in your wallet as well. So it's certainly also a way to differentiate the offering and make sure that on the long term, you build a set of solutions and an infrastructure that's going to be scalable but also adaptable over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we think about the future of digital payments, you touched a bit on sort of the proliferation of mobile phones really being an accelerant for this digital-first approach that financial institutions, fintechs can now take. So with that in mind, what upcoming developments and trends do you anticipate, kind of specifically looking at the APAC region?
Again, as the world is really migrating to digital, right? So we see hundreds of banks, a lot of fintech, leveraging the new technologies. Everything is being driven by digital now, by APIs. We also see consumer needs adapting, right? So as I said, nobody wants to wait for weeks and months anymore to get access to payment method. And as a consequence, companies had to adapt. And the big trends to me are, on one side, tokenization is a major trend, right? The fact that we don't want to expose funds anymore to fraud, and that basically we replace that funds by a set of tokens that can be activated in any device on any channel is definitely the game changer in the industry, right? Then we have all the other trends, right? So consumer behaviors, as I said, is a massive driver of change. The companies that are going to be winning the games are the ones that will be able to adapt their offering to those new customer needs. And we saw that the fintechs have been actually driving a lot of those changes and that innovation, pushing the traditional players to adapt more quickly. The third trend is certainly everything related to authentication and security. Static password is over, right? So we need to move to biometric. We need to move to new ways of managing security, because it's not only about the security of the transaction, it's also the security of the data, right? It's very clear that the data are being spread everywhere now, and consumers are extremely concerned about that. If companies are not able to prove that those data are managed properly with transparency, I don't think you're going to get adoption.
I mean, you've touched on so many innovations that they benefit the customer experience, they improve the security of the financial institution, and I think they also provide savings, right, when done correctly. So when you think about ROI, what are some of the expectations that you're communicating out to our end users, our financial institutions and fintechs, about what they can expect in terms of the return on investment?
Yeah, and I think that's a very, very valid question, because when we launched Digital First, obviously you're always challenged, right? So saying, okay, this is a digital experience, but bottom line is still a payment, right? So why should I make the investment? And I think the investment is now proven, especially in AP, for instance, where we have more than 60 customers that have already implemented a digital first experience at different stages of their development. And we have heard very clearly that, first you attract new types of customers. So in terms of customer base, you grow your customer base by providing that digital experience. It's very clear also that you optimize the cost at different level. Cost of acquisition is fully digital, right? The cost of retention is very clear, and the cost of operation, because again you have new modern infrastructure that allow for those economies of scale. And if I want to be a bit more concrete, right, so we have been looking a bit at some major KPIs, and we saw 4 major improvements, right? So the first one is that we saw an increase of about 10% of spend when the card is digitally issued, which is pretty massive, which also represent about 4% increase of the number of transactions. So people have more confidence in that payment method, find it more easy to use, and so spend more. And I would say also that what is interesting is that the level of approval for the banks has increased also by between 2 and 8%, which is massive, right? Everybody knows that getting a transaction decline is extremely annoying, right? You are here, you want to pay for your ticket, it doesn't work. An increase of 2 to 8% is pretty massive. And next to that, the beauty of it is that you approve more, but you have also less fraud. Right. We see that a decrease of between 4 basis points of fraud on all those transactions. So the KPIs are there, really the proof points are there to actually keep investing in that digital first experience across the board, I would say.
Absolutely. And when you think specifically about the security and the privacy, you touched on tokenization. What are some of those meaningful sort of first steps that the banks, the fintechs that you work with are typically taking first? What's that beginning of the journey look like?
Yeah, I think they need to recognize that, tokenization is going to become the new standard, right? So we have seen, for instance, the Hong Kong monetary authorities, for instance, have issued a recommendation that actually aim at preventing putting the card number on plastic card, to avoid actually exposing credentials to fraudsters, right? And if you look at the best way of doing that is by even replacing that PAN with a token that's going to be specific to any device and any transaction through a cryptogram, right? And as you move there, I think that's the first investment, is to move to tokenization, and the bank are massively investing in that. Second is obviously to make sure that that token can be used in any device through any channel. So allowing your consumer to push their credentials and their cards into their banking wallet, into Apple, Google Pay, that any merchant will be able to put a card on file in a tokenized manner, to avoid security breaches that we have seen happening a lot in the past.
Absolutely. And that's why Entrust is so excited to be a digital first partner. I mean, we've all, for practically our entire history, we've been working with Mastercard to enable the physical credentialing. But with the arrival of digital card solution, and now even some of our digital account opening technology, it's really exciting for Entrust to be at the forefront, be a marquee provider under this digital first paradigm. And we're just so excited to be a part of that, specifically leveraging some of the Ekata and new data.
Exactly.
So even looking outside of just payments and tokenization, right? Mastercard is a huge player in terms of identity. Yeah, we totally agree, and that's why we've been, so dedicated to operating under the digital first paradigm. And one thing we're really excited in terms of concrete examples is the arrival of pay by account, specifically in Asia Pacific. So can you explain a little about what pay by account is, why it's so relevant to so many people here in Singapore at Singapore FinTech?
I think this is great that we are here in Singapore because, as you mentioned, that pay by bank account is top of mind here in many markets. Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, and the reason is very simple, right? So we are the opportunity in AP is massive. The customer base is there, but actually to move to a fully digital world, sometimes you have certain steps to go through, right? And it's pretty clear that in some markets you have a high proportion of the population that is certainly banked, right? But don't have really a card payment, right? And as a segue, a transition to becoming a card holder and be able to basically benefit from a digital first experience. I think the first step is to digitize that bank account, to allow that bank account to be used in all the digital channels that I mentioned earlier. So basically, through tokenization, we will be able to tokenize that bank account and push that into a wallet that you will be able to use at any NFC physical location. Right? You go to your supermarket or to the smaller shop, you're going to be able to tap your phone and a transaction will be able to be initiated contactless using the token representing the bank account. But not only that, but online as well, right? So if you have the token into your app, you will be able to transact online at any online merchant. So it's extremely relevant here in many markets because we see that as a first step towards basically supporting a financial inclusion strategy and moving into a digital first world. I think the time where a company could integrate all the components of the value chain is over. There are too many elements to be integrated. The time to market is shorter as well, and the level of investment cannot be sustained. And so I'm pretty confident that companies like Entrust have a massive role to play to actually help any of the customers, whether they are the banks, whether they are the fintechs, whether they are the merchants and PSP, to actually what I call that simplify the complexity, right? You guys are technologists, you have a reputation on the market, you have the knowledge and know-how to do the things right. And I'm pretty sure that if you keep integrating the assets like you have done that with tokenization, Ekata, new data, and maybe others, you will be able to bundle that and deliver extremely appealing value proposition to all those customers at a price and with a time to market that very few people will be able to meet actually and match.